Hey everybody, welcome back to The Pursuit. Jeff Hutchin here with John Sporov, and today's episode is being brought to you by one of the fastest growing real estate brands on the Front Range, and that would be the Realty One Group Premier. They're part of a global network of excellence, and this group run by Gary Carlson and his team do an amazing job in what they really do a nice job of putting you first, making sure that whatever your needs are, they are addressed from the very get-go. And in this very challenging real estate market, you need a group that's willing to go out there and work hard for you. This is a family-driven brokerage with an incredible group of forward-thinking professionals that will do an amazing job for you. If you have that biggest decision you'll ever make sitting before you, make sure you do your due diligence and reach out and touch base with the people at Realty One Group Premier. You can find them on the World Wide Web at realty1grouppremier.com. So thank you to Gary and his team for making today's episode possible. How you doing, my man?
I am doing great. We're going earlier than we normally do.
Earlier from
I've
in the
only
morning.
gotten one cup of coffee in.
Yeah,
I should have another one sitting right here.
but we're late this week.
We are late this week, so we
'Cause-
apologize to everybody for
Yeah.
that. As I think we made reference to, we're in a busy season of life right now,
Yep.
and yeah, so we're going to get it out at least once a week.
Yeah.
It may not always be on Tuesday at 4, as you may be accustomed to, but hopefully, if they're subscribing though, they'll get a little bell, a little
That's
alert
right.
that
That's
says
right.
we're on.
That's right.
And so we're just trying to, actually, we're not late. We're just actually trying to help people get in the habit of paying attention to their subscription alerts. So you're welcome.
You bet. So we're launching today live on Facebook, and then we'll have this, of course, edited and packaged up really neatly for you guys to watch this via YouTube and other formats. So today, keeping the theme of staying in the things for which God is moving in our hearts.
Yep.
We're going to turn to Luke chapter 8 today. We're going to talk a little bit about a parable that probably most people are familiar with, I would guess. And it's a parable of the sower, and we're not going to talk about necessarily the whole parable today, John, but we're going to talk about one specific aspect of the parable that I think relates probably, I would guess, and I'd like to know your thoughts on this, probably relates most to most people that are part of the church. And so let's just get into the parable and talk a little bit about what Jesus is teaching here. First of all, the incredible thing about Jesus is he's probably the best teacher that ever lived. And one of the things that made him so good in his teaching was he had the ability to take kingdom concepts and to repackage them and teach them in a way that people could understand and people could relate to. And that's what parables are. And so oftentimes you'll see parables that are spoken about, especially during this time with this particular people group. And he'll talk about, talk in a context that they can really connect to. And in this case, it's agronomy, right? It's how things grow.
Agronomy.
Big word, huh?
For 8:30 in the morning, that's pretty good, man. Agronomy.
And so Jesus is talking to probably, it says here in this particular passage, that a multitude. My guess that a vast majority of these people are farmers. And so he recognizes that, and he says, you know what, this is a great opportunity to teach one of my concepts. And I'm going to teach it in the concept of farming that they will relate to. And he talks about seed, right?
So people can follow along. If you didn't read the title, we're in Luke 8.
Yeah,
By the
okay.
way,
Yeah.
I don't think you said that.
I
But
did say it.
You did say Luke 8.
You're
You said the
clearly not
parable of the
listening.
sower.
You're clearly not listening to me, but that's okay. Luke
Sound
8,
like my
and
wife.
specifically we're going to look at, we're going to start around verse 4. And let me just read the first part of this. So Jesus says, and when a great multitude had gathered, and they had come to him from every city, he spoke a parable. And he said, a sower went out to sow a seed. And as he sowed, some fell by the wayside, and it was trampled down, and the birds of the air devoured it. Some fell on rock, and as soon as it sprang up, it withered away because it lacked moisture. And then some fell on thorns, and the thorns sprang up with it and choked it. But the others fell on good ground, sprang up, and yielded a crop 100-fold. And when he said these things, he cried, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. What do you think at that moment the people were thinking? Have you ever thought about that? Because he stops right here.
In other places, like I think about when he said, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, that Peter thought he was talking about bread, like literally about bread. And so I don't think that this is maybe any different. Like you're pointing out, he's early on in his ministry, And so they're walking along with him, and he's pointing out something, and they're like, "Is he talking about agronomy?"
Yeah,
right?
he's going, "Wait a minute."
Is right.
These people are farmers,
Yeah.
right? And they're probably going, "Wait a minute, you're trying to teach. You're a carpenter,
Yeah, exactly.
and you're a carpenter out here trying to teach us about farming.
Mm-hmm.
And don't you think we know that if you take seed and throw it on hard ground, that it's probably not going to take? Because if you ask any farmer, what does it take in order for a seed to grow? What are some of the things? I don't think you're a farmer.
You don't know
Do you have
that?
any experience in farming? Other than
Actually,
laying some sod in your yard?
Yeah. Does that count as farming?
I think it does to a certain. But okay, let's talk about that. In
Yeah.
order to prepare the
it's kind of the
ground,
same. That's right.
for which
you gotta-
the sod to be placed, if that's seed. Well,
Yeah.
what did you have
You
to
got
do?
to till it up, ensure that the ground is fertile. I would imagine that they're not having to lay topsoil and things like what I
Sure.
would do with sod. But the point is still the same. That says you want to find a piece of ground, right, that has the right amount of sun and shade, that maybe has some water nearby that you could tap into, and is rich in soil, and to till that soil up, and to prepare the ground to lay, to put the seed in.
Yeah. And we can really take this analogy a long ways, but really what he's talking about here is the condition of the ground for which the seed is landing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's an incredible analogy. So what Jesus begins to see very quickly is the people are not connecting. He knows that.
He knows.
He knows that. He's drawn them in, right? He's got them curious now. And so he says, what I want to do is I want to talk to you about the condition of your heart. Right? As I just addressed the condition of the soil, where certain soils will receive a seed, others won't, I want to talk about the condition of your heart, because the condition of your heart determines whether or not you're going to be in a position to receive the seed. Okay?
Right.
So now Jesus, in verse 11, says, I'm going to help you understand what I just taught you, right? He says this. Now, the parable is this. The seed is the word of God. Mm-hmm. Those by the wayside are the ones who hear, then the devil comes and takes away the word out of their hearts, lest they should believe and be saved. But the ones on the rock are those, when they hear, receive the word with joy, and these have no root, who believe for a while and a time, and then in temptation they fall away. Now the ones that fell among the thorns are those who, when they heard it, go out and are choked out with what? The cares, riches, and the pleasures of life, and they bring no fruit to maturity. But the ones that fell on the good ground are those who have, hearing the word, with a noble and good heart, keep it and bear fruit with patience. So he talks about the four different conditions. Mm-hmm. The one is the ones that are just completely lost. The word is thrown out there, the seed is thrown out there, but it's quickly stolen by Satan. Mm-hmm. And salvation never occurs. The second one are those people that are somewhat intrigued. They hear the word and they're like, hey, this is kind of intriguing. This is interesting. I could potentially buy into this thing. So maybe there's a level of belief, but there's a lack of faith, right? It's faith that allows us to pass into salvation. And so there's probably a level of curiosity and interest, but now the world comes along, temptation happens, they get back on their own path, and they forgot about what they just heard.
Yeah,
about.
it's a season of life. Maybe they went to church and liked what they heard, and were intrigued with it, as you said. I like that word, for a couple of weeks.
And that was me, by the way, for the first 18 years of my life. I'd gone to church enough. I'd heard the word, and I kind of like, this God thing, I'm good with that. It's Jesus, Son of God, lived a perfect life, died on a cross, Virgin Mary. I never really struggled with any of that kind of stuff. I was like, I'm good with that. For whatever reason, I never struggled with it. But there was no relationship, right? I went on and lived my life, and it wasn't until after I was 18 that I became a follower of Christ. And I also don't want to spend a lot of time on the fourth example, and that's the ones that have good soil, good seed, it's planted, it's rooting, it's deep, it's producing fruit, okay?
Well, let me just say this real quick, though, because I would say that that my experience was in that fourth category, and it wasn't because because the ground was so well prepared. If you think about what it means to fall on good soil has been churned up, and sometimes good soil means that the messiest, worst part of your life, when everything is churned up, that is the time that the seed takes root.
You bet.
So I just wanted to point that out in contrast to that second.
It's not that I just want to blow by it.
No, I got you.
But again, the point of today's episode is to say, I want to talk about this third group. Because like I said at the beginning of the episode, I think the third group represents a vast majority of the church today.
Yep.
Okay? And these are people that have heard the Word of God. They've received it. The seed has began to take root. But for whatever reason,
Yep.
it's not producing fruit. It's not growing at the pace that it needs to. And the reason why is because it has thorns and weeds that have grown up within the garden. Okay? So now the analogy is your life, your spiritual journey is a garden. Okay? And the question is, what are the things that are going to keep me from growing at a fast pace, at the pace that we're supposed to be growing, and also to produce ultimately fruit for the kingdom, right?
Yep.
And Jesus talks about in verse, looks like it's in verse 14 of Luke 8, he talks about the three things that produce weeds, that produce thorns in our life, that keep the plant from growing, that keep your spiritual life from producing fruit. And the three things, that's what I want to talk about today. The first thing he says is, the first way that thorns and weeds are produced is by the cares of life. What do you think that means when he says that? The cares of life. How can that become a prohibitor to growth?
Well, yeah. So cares are the things, by definition, that we are focused on. And, we can go through our life just consumed with the challenges that present themselves to you and demand attention.
Yeah.
Right? And you can spend as much, the cares of the world, how my 401k is doing. How am I preparing for retirement? How am I going to get that promotion? Not that these things are not important. Maybe they're more materialistic. It's that next house we're going to buy. It's that school district I want my kids to be in. It's these things sort of get all-consuming. And you're right. And so the tender, roots of the good fruit or the good seed that God has put in our life that require time, attention, watering, sun, all of those things. Because let me point this out. Whenever you go, and maybe you experience this in your own garden. Which, by the way, are you still doing that?
I
the
do.
Tomatoes and
I do.
Strawberries and
Yes,
the
I do. And I have a story about that.
Okay.
As a matter of fact.
But I would venture to guess that weeds grow. If you ever noticed in your garden that weeds will grow with literally no care, and they grow fast, right? They require no tending to, and they grow. Whereas the things that are valuable and produce fruit require attention and care.
Man, I'm so proud of you.
What?
I'm so proud of you that you pulled that out of that. That's really good.
Oh, thanks.
I underestimated you.
You did. Was that? Yeah.
No,
okay.
that's like some serious wisdom that you just dropped on us right now. It was
Every once in a while.
Well,
Every once in a
it was
while.
one of
Early in the morning.
It was one of the points I wanted to make. So it kind of hacks me off a little bit.
Okay, well,
You stole my
expound
thunder.
then on it.
No, I think you're doing a beautiful job. And it's just that. It's in order for a plant to grow, and I'm talking about a plant that you desire, a plant that's going to produce fruit, it requires intentionality. In order for a weed to grow,
No intention.
it doesn't take any intentionality.
Nothing.
I wish it were that easy, right?
Golly.
And so using the analogy of my garden, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because I do have a very nice garden that I've placed on the side of my house that has some really good stuff in it, some strawberries, some peppers. I got some cilantro. I got your tomatoes. I got your onions. I got it all. I got everything you need to make salsa,
Or
basically.
fajitas, or
Oh, yeah, it's
anything.
awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
But here's the point. I went out there in this early spring, and I set my garden up, man. I made sure the ground was tilled. I had I put fertilizer in it, right? It was all good. It wasn't necessarily organic, but I was fertilized. I had my plants. They were at an optimal age to plant at the optimal season.
Yep.
And so then, if I just put those things in the ground, even though I prepared all that, and I walk away, and I come back in 50 days or 60 days or 80 days when these things are supposed to produce fruit, how successful do you think my garden would be?
Not successful.
What would I find more than likely?
You would find it overgrown. Well, you'd find the fruit choked out with weeds, is what you would find.
Okay. First of all, I probably wouldn't find much fruit.
Yeah.
And the fruit that I did find probably was not at not at what it's capable of producing. Okay. What else would I find with that neglect?
Or you find death. I mean, some of those the plants that you have planted would have already died.
Right, because what do I have to do? We don't live in the most ideal and optimal climate for growth, certainly not year-round.
Yeah.
But it requires me, because we don't get a ton of rain here. We're in the high desert, so it requires me to water, right?
Yep.
And so if I just rely completely on what falls from the sky, we're not going to get what we need in order for fruit to be produced. So I'm going to find some withering. I'm going to find some death. And what's naturally going to happen, and by the way, I didn't put the seeds for the wheat in the ground, not knowingly. But what happens is wind blows it in.
Yep.
Birds carry it in. There's different things that carry these weed seeds into my garden. And the next thing I know, I've got weeds growing up, to your point, choking out the growth that I'm trying to produce.
Right.
And part of what Jesus is saying here is one of the ways that weeds get grown up in our gardens is because we put way too much emphasis on the cares of the world. We're carrying and worrying about things that we weren't called to carry and worry about. And see, you and I were talking off camera, and we're in a really unique season right now, both of us right now, and we're in this place where God is teaching us to trust and to let go and to take your focus off the things that the world has its focus on. I know you and I have been media fasting.
Yep.
And since the election, I haven't watched literally any media. I could not tell you what's going on. It's bizarre. It's crazy. But I'll tell you what it's done for me. It's taken my eyes off of the things that the world says we need to care about, that the enemy says you need to focus on these things. Because here's what the enemy knows. If I can get you to focus on these things and worry about these things, which, by the way, 99.999% of them, you have no ability to impact or control. But if I can get you to put all your energy towards that, guess what it takes your eyes away from? It takes your eyes off the Father.
Yeah.
And what it allows to happen is weeds and thorns to grow up in your life that now choke out our ability to walk in sonship.
Is it fair to say, because as you're saying that, I was thinking what we're doing is we're walking in the fruit of peace. And so as you look at the garden of your life, and now to take the metaphor out of kind of the plants and squash and tomatoes and that sort of thing, Galatians 5:22 says the fruit of the Spirit, the thing that we're protecting in that garden, the thing that we're cultivating, we're trying to grow, and ensuring that the weeds don't choke out, is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Though anything else that's growing in there is a weed.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Anything that's producing anxiety, suffering, worry, stress, anger, fear.
I mean, that's
unbelief.
That's Psalm 91:10. It talks about being overcome by evil.
Yeah.
Right? By being overcome by evil are those emotions that you're talking about.
Yes.
Which ultimately are rooted in being too heavily focused in on the cares of the world. Right? Yeah. And that allows it to grow up. As we focus on those things, we take our eyes off God. God says, you know what? Let me handle those things. Give me those things, and what I will give you in replace of your worry and your anxiety is I will give you peace. Right? That's Philippians 4, 6, and 7. It talks about that. Okay, so the first thing he talks about is the cares of the world.
Yep.
And then he gets even more specific, because one of the cares of the world, probably the biggest care in our world, is what? Finances.
Sure.
It's money. Matter of fact, there's no topic discussed more in the New Testament than money itself. There's a reason for that. Why do you think money is such a huge topic in Scripture? Why does Jesus address it so much?
Well, because it's a revealer of the heart, right? It's as you've probably heard from many pulpits. In fact, you may have said this before. If you want to understand the health, the spiritual health of somebody, let's open their checkbook and look, how they're spending their money. It reveals your heart.
Yeah, it reveals the heart, and I think even deeper than that, it reveals our source of hope. Right? Where are you placing your hope? And so Jesus knew this. And because he also experienced the temptations of man, so he understands, right? That's the cool thing about our God, is he understands the struggle of man.
Yeah.
Right? Because he took on flesh. And so he understands the struggle that we have with finances. And so he addresses it here and says, listen, let me paraphrase it this way. And this is what I love. Rick Warren said it this way about this particular passage, and I love it. He said, so often we get so focused on making a living we forget about making a life.
That's good.
We're so focused on making a living that we don't focus on making a life. And I'll even add to his quote and say this: a life that counts, a life of significance. And you and I have talked about this before, and we probably even mentioned it on one of our previous episodes. But when I talk about living a life of significance, what we talk about there is investing in things that last for eternity. See, there's a reason why Jesus said, listen, invest in the kingdom. Because when you invest in the kingdom, your investment is eternal. As opposed to when we invest on things on earth, when our cares and our focus is on the things of this world, and we invest in the things in this world, we might experience a certain level of pleasure for a season because we do that.
Yep.
But he said, here's the problem. These are the things that get burned up. So invest in things that rust and moth cannot destroy. Why? Because that's the investment that will last forever,
eternity.
right? Take your eyes off the things of this world. Invest in the things that matter. And here's what I've been able to determine. The only thing that is eternal are relationships.
No doubt.
It's people.
Yeah.
So what Jesus is saying, to invest in the kingdom is to invest in people.
Does that mean, because, I'm thinking about, maybe, I think even the disciples asked it this way, can a rich man get into the kingdom of heaven? And he said, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. Why? Because I could push back and say, but a rich man, you talk about investment and making an impact on this world, and man, you and I know some of these people, right? And rich is relative, right? What's rich to me may not be rich to the next person, but people of significant financial position that are doing incredible things on this earth. But it's a rare thing to find somebody with that level of wealth that isn't all consumed with it.
And I'll tell you this, with maybe some of the exception of our brothers and sisters that watch in third world countries that watch The Pursuit, if you're in the United States of America, you're sitting in the top 2, 3, 4% of the world's most wealthy. And you might look at that and say, that's impossible. Have you seen the neighborhood next to me? Again, when we live in the United States, we have this tendency to live in a bubble and think that this is the rest of the way that the rest of the world lives, and especially right where we live here in Douglas County. It's one of the wealthiest counties in the world. And so, but here's what we need to understand, and I appreciate you pointing that out. Wealth is relative. All right? In the eyes of the world, you and I are extremely wealthy.
No doubt.
So we are no different than that rich man that Jesus was
That's
speaking
right.
about passing through the eye of the needle, right?
That's right.
So with great blessing comes great responsibility, right? Genesis 12, 1-3, when God was speaking over Abraham and he was speaking the blessing, it's the Abrahamic Covenant. What he says at the very end of that covenant, when he says, listen to me, I'm going to give you, Abraham, I'm going to give you land, I'm going to give you offspring, right? You're going to have so many children underneath you, it's going to outnumber the stars in the sky. I'm going to give you a promised land that you're going to be able to go into and occupy and experience my blessing. And then he says, because I bless you, this is verse 3 of chapter 12, because I bless you, I don't bless you so then you can be fat and happy and sit in your big home and drive your nice car and have a bunch of camels, right?
That's right.
What does he say? I'm going to bless you. Why?
To be a blessing.
So you can bless others. That's amazing to me about God. That he says, listen, one of the cool benefits of walking as a son, one of the cool benefits of operating in a covenant, which, by the way, is a topic we need to unpack on this show.
Covenant
is listen, I'm going to bless you, yes, so you will be blessed, but more importantly than that, so then you can turn around and bless other people.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, I love giving to other people. I love blessing other people.
No doubt, 100%.
And so God set up a system that says, I'm going to allow you to do just that, which is incredibly cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about riches.
We talked about cares.
We talked about
riches.
cares. And then he says the pleasures of life. Okay, this is tough because you look at it and go, wait a minute, does that mean I can't enjoy the things of this world? Talk to me about that. Why do you think Jesus takes the time to say the pleasures of life is something that can become a weed or a thorn that's going to keep you from receiving my word?
Well, I think there's a progression here. I think that this idea of from going from cares to building a life around those cares and finding the way to finance those cares, if you will, So that, because what our heart deeply craves, no matter who we are, no matter what culture we're in, is we crave the Galatians 5:22 life. We want peace.
Yep.
We want to feel a lack of anxiety. We want to have a life where we're kind to people and people are kind to us. And so when we don't see the path to that naturally, what we go try to do is we try to build the counterfeit for it, right? So we're after, and that's what I look at when I see the pleasures of life. It's like we've got these cares. We try to finance our cares so that we can produce the false fruit of the Spirit, right?
Okay.
It's the counterfeit.
So let me ask this question, because somebody might be out there thinking this. So does that mean, as a follower of Christ, if I'm truly going to walk in sonship and I'm going to walk in righteousness, right? Does that mean that I can't have the pleasures in life, that I can't enjoy pleasures in life?
Absolutely not.
Because that can become something that theologically takes us off target, right? So what does that mean then? When he says the pleasures of life can become a problem, but you're telling me that it's okay to enjoy certain pleasure. Where's the differentiator?
We should enjoy. I think, Hutch, it's this. We should enjoy the pleasures of life as a byproduct of our focus on living a life for God, right?
Okay.
In other words, you and I get to enjoy. This is a pleasure of both of our life is to get to enjoy doing this, and it's a byproduct of following him his invitation to this calling, right? We could go produce this on our own without it, but it wouldn't be fulfilling.
Yeah.
Is that a way to say it?
No,
I mean, to me, it's a focus on the pleasure versus a focus on the purpose.
Okay, thank you.
With the pleasure being a byproduct of following the purpose.
That's a good differentiator. There is focusing on the pleasure, because when we focus on the pleasure, who's at the center of that equation?
It's all about me.
It's all about me, right? When
Yes.
what Jesus is saying is, it's not that you're not to enjoy life,
Right?
And there's things we're to enjoy. Certainly, Jesus did that. We saw that in his life. But he said, when that becomes the focus of everything you do, it puts you in the center. And it removes him from where he is supposed to be. If you've seen that analogy, you've seen the drawing of, our life is a circle, and there's a throne in the middle of the circle, and who's sitting on the throne. And what Jesus is saying is, when you pursue the pleasures of life, you sit on the throne of your life, and you've removed me from where I've asked to be, and that is to be on the throne of your life.
It's his domain.
And so what he's saying here, simply put, is not that we can't enjoy the things of life. He's just saying, when that becomes the focal point of everything you do,
That's good.
you remove me from the equation. And when you remove me from the equation, when you remove the gardener from the garden, what's going to grow? Weeds. And the fruit is not going to be produced to the level that it's capable of.
That's good. And so the gardener is ultimately, and we go back to John 15, really, it's around that he is the vine dresser, right? So a garden absent the gardener is the environment for this third category of
That's exactly
fruit
right.
bearing. Yeah.
And he's just saying, listen, in order to keep the gardener in your garden, for it to flourish, we need to make sure we keep a really good handle on making sure that we're not too focused on the cares and the worries of this world. Finances, we got to keep them in their proper perspective. You must realize, Scripture says, it is I that gives you the ability to generate wealth. So if it's he that gives us the ability to generate wealth, when things don't go well, we're either going to worry about it and try to manipulate the situation and go get it ourselves, or we're going to trust and realize that we have a Father in heaven that cares for us, and he'll provide for us. We just need to stay righteous and faithful. Or he says, don't allow the pleasures of life to become too big in your life that you become the focal point and not me.
That is idolatry.
Okay?
Yep.
And if we can do that, it moves us into that fourth category. It moves us now into a position where our hearts are softened, just as the soil needs to be softened in order for a seed to grow. And it allows our hearts to be softened, and it allows a seed when it comes. And by the way, we didn't talk about this, but the seed that comes into our life, in the way that we receive the seed in multiple different ways. We receive it from great teaching that we happen to sit under or catch online or go to church and experience. We receive it in our own time and abiding in the Word of God and reading. It opens up our heart, right? As our heart is softened, as we read God's Word, Holy Spirit is there to teach us and guide us and lead us. And it just comes through, sometimes the Holy Spirit just speaks to us. It's the prophetic that comes.
No matter, my encouragement out of this is, no matter where you find yourself in this place, the condition of your heart, it's never too late.
That's right.
He is always able and willing to say, okay, we're going to start over. We're going to rip this whole thing up, and we're going to till it all up, recultivate the soil.
That's right.
Let's do it.
Go yank the weeds, soften the soil, add a little fertilizer, put some water on it, allow the sun. See what I did there? Allow the sun to hit it.
SUNSON.
That's
Very
right.
Cool.
What happens?
Alliteration there.
He can bring it back to life.
He can.
And that's a beautiful thing for all of us. And you're right. Thank you for saying that, because that's true. For all of us, it's never too late. Keep pressing on. Whether you're 8 or 80, it's never too late. Hey, we really appreciate you guys taking a few moments out of your day to join us here for another episode of The Pursuit. We hope you're blessed. We encourage you, dive in, read a little bit more about Luke chapter 8, things that Jesus is teaching us there, and you'll be able to glean and receive the things for which Spirit wants to talk to you about. Hey, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on The Pursuit.